just move on over to introductions from the panelists, and in no particular order. Ben, would you like to go first?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Gaucherin. I am a Senior Director of IT in Central IT at Harvard, which is called Harvard University IT. My group is responsible for what I would describe as IT for the city of Harvard University. So anything from power plant to the food supply chain to health services, the police, and everything else you can imagine about running campus every day. I am also a faculty member at the Extension School, a teaching fellow at the Kennedy School, and one of my claim to fame as it relates to today's topic is I learned AI back in the early 90s when no one cared about AI except to play chess and control nuclear plants.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Miro.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm Miro Humer. I'm the Vice President and CIO at Case Western Reserve University. So we're a university, an R1 research university with about 15,000 students. We are kind of more of a STEM type school. Our IT organization supports all the IT infrastructure on campus. So for research, academics, administration, we also have a medical school. So we do all of that. I personally have been in higher ed for about 25 years. Before that, I was in telecom, banking, and consulting. By far, I like higher ed the most. So really enjoy it.
I'm with you, Miro. I've been in higher ed since 2007 or so, and I think I'm staying.
Yeah.
James?
Thank you, Nuno. James Stoffel here, Director of Technology at Showa Boston Institute. I've been in education technology since 2010. Prior to that, I had been in the corporate world doing technology, and I had the pleasure of May of 2017 joining up with Nuno to create our very first Meetup, which actually it was a success, and we've been doing this ever since, and it's very engaging and very learning too because of the people we get introduced to, as well as the topics that they bring to the table. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we have for questions and or for discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, James. And certainly last but not least, Emily.
Thanks, Nuno. So great to be here. Thank you for having me. I am presently the AI integration technologist at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. My career started 20 years ago in e-commerce, where I built chatbots and worked on AI algorithms on websites that helped people find product recommendations faster. Now Amazon does it seamlessly. We don't need me anymore, but it's amazing how everything goes full circle. So at UW-Stout, we're a polytechnic institution, and we've really done incredible things by integrating AI across our campus and really injecting it into all different programs. My role really works across campus to collaborate with faculty, researchers, our academic staff to help them really understand, support, and bring AI into the curriculum or into the sort of systems that we're using at our university to enhance anything and everything that we're doing, and then also working and building those industry connections to make sure that we're helping to lead an industry, prepare our students accurately, and model everything that's happening out in the world, prepare our students most effectively, because there's a lot of change going on right now. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, Emily, and all the other panelists as well. And I think I hear in all of your introductions and also in some of the messages we've received and interacted with that AI obviously is so much more than technology, right? Ethics are becoming such a hot topic. So if you haven't seen the description of this meetup, we try to really focus on or have a conversation around ethics and how people are dealing with ethics and AI in various areas. So to start off, why don't we start with Ben? Ben, you have a background, as you said, in teaching as well as executing, right? In doing. What is your opinion how would you define AI?
Well, this is a pretty central question. It was interesting. When you're going to talk about anything, to me, it always seems to be a good idea to go back to what is the definition for the thing. And unfortunately for all of us here, there is no globally accepted definition of what AI really is in a formal way that you can apply and test whether something is truly AI versus not, right? It's a local product from the northeast of the US. The term AI was devised in summer of 1956. But unfortunately, they didn't also follow through with specifics, in terms of attributes. So nowadays, I think AI includes one of three things, not mutually exclusive, right? Technology that simulates some level of human thought, whether it's analysis or the ability to provide recommendations. Oftentimes put under the topic of AI is technology used to interface with the humans, be it computer vision or speech, so you can speak to the machine or the machine can speak back to you. And then a third, which has grown fast and furious as of late with generative AI, is when the machine can create content that is looks very real in nature. So sophisticated text, photographies of things that don't exist, and other things. So generally speaking, when people talk about it, it's centered around those three things. Today, it typically is done with something called machine learning, algorithms that take a lot of data and get fine-tuned to a specific purpose. But being the old guy doing AI, I'm just going to mention the fact that when I was learning AI, spell checkers, the run-of-the-mill spell checker that will tell you if there's a spelling mistake as you type an email, that was considered to be AI, right? And I don't think anyone today would consider this stuff AI, right? So my recommendation when it comes to AI is instead of sticking just to AI, to start talking about the specific. Is it a chatbot? Is it machine learning? And I think that helps, get to a more useful conversation.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for helping us kind of level set the conversation as to what AI means. Most people have, you can ask 100 different people, each one will give you a slightly different definition. Let me ask James a question. James, you and I have talked about this a little bit before. AI is being used so much as a tool in educational institutions. How are you and the folks you work with measuring, right, education, measuring the impacts of the learning that students are attempting to do in this new AI world where they can use all sorts of different tools, AI tools?
Yeah, that's for the last year, that's been a quandary, so to speak, in regards to how do you measure that? And then are the students having anything as a takeaway, either from what they learned by using AI as a tool or from the actual classroom? So what we're ending up finding is that there's a question of, you're spending 9 months or a year taking a course, but you've used AI for a good proportion of that coursework to do either the written work or to look up information to find an answer. And the question is there any retention? So we find that some of the faculty members have ended up doing kind of like a flipped classroom where they'll have them do all the studying and reading and research after class, before class, but then when class starts, then the test actually begins. So at that point, they can't use any tools. They actually have to apply what they've learned to see if anything sticks. Now, further discussion with other faculty member and supporting academic administrators, the question is, at what point, and I think all of us probably at some point in the higher ed realm has asked this, when does AI end up replacing the diploma? And I say that very broadly, but in retrospect, I remember being in the corporate world and looking at programmers, and every cube back then, we're talking in the 90s, they would have either, the C++ or Visual Basic book, and they'd have like 5, 6, 7 programming books. What's the difference between having a multitude of books in your cubicle to research and find answers versus using AI to do your job? I guess for me to answer that would be, do you at least understand the answer in which you're looking for and know what the form should be in when you get it, versus accepting an answer and not knowing if that is a correct answer or not? And that is the scary part in regards to, some of the, I wouldn't say trades like a plumber or welder or something like that, but something that requires finance or even creating a syllabus for a classroom, something to that effect. So it's very interesting. It's changing and challenging the teachers. There are still a couple of teachers that are still on the cusp of accepting it fully, whereas there are some that embrace and allow their students to use it. I'm, again, curious to see what it's going to look like in the next 2 to 3 years. How students, when they graduate, what were they able to take away? Did they actually learn anything that they paid for education? So.
Ben, I saw you doing this. Did you want to add to that? No, you're good. Okay. Well, why don't we, thanks, James. Let's go on to our next question, which is related for Emily. If AI can do so much of what humans can do, um, although it can't do some things for sure, how should we define or redefine the purpose of higher education?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. And it's a question that's really been top of mind for many folks. One that really strikes at the heart of what education, particularly higher education, is meant to achieve in this ever evolving AI landscape. It's never ending, right? The minute we think we've gotten a handle on it, found a new pathway, boom, a new tool comes out, and we have to start at square one. So I guess I'd begin by saying that AI's ability to replicate certain forms of human creativity and maybe perform academic tasks, writing papers, generating art, even solving complex tasks, as we've seen with these newer transformative models like O1 from OpenAI or their new promised O3 model. But it also really challenges us to reimagine what higher education should be about. For much of its history, higher education has focused on two primary things: the transfer of knowledge and the cultivation of skills. But as AI increasingly takes on the role of a knowledge repository, even a skill generator, we must shift our focus towards developing something uniquely human: the capacity for critical thinking, ethical reasoning, collaboration, and certainly more so than ever now, adaptability in the face of ever evolving changes. So let's think of it like this. AI might help us get to answers faster, but higher education should now emphasize helping students ask better questions. It should nurture curiosity, creativity, and the ability to really evaluate and guide the use of these technologies responsibly. Moreover, I would say this is kind of this moment to expand the value of higher education beyond the individual. So institutions need to teach students not just how to excel in their careers, but how to really contribute meaningfully to communities and society as a whole. That involves addressing ethical implications of AI, fostering interdisciplinary learning, and integrating technology in ways that really deepen our humanity rather than just replace it. So we need to remember our higher education systems were built and prepared for people from the last industrial revolution, right? That's what they were developed for. We were once told, well, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket your whole life, and lies. We absolutely do, and I do, right? So we need to be mindful of and prepared for this new world where students, I think, will demand to have the language calculator that are these tools like ChatGPT and other AI tools at their fingertips as well. You'll have top talent who won't attend institutions that don't embrace and have a standpoint to innovate with AI. You'll also have top talent who won't want to move into particular industries or businesses that don't embrace and innovate with new technology and tools because they'll see it as being left behind. Now, at its best, higher education is not just about creating workers, it's about really creating citizens, innovators, and leaders who can navigate a world where machines augment our potential or work alongside us and coexist. So I think in that realm, it's a time to think towards reinventing higher education for this new industrial revolution we're in.
I'm happy to hear that you feel like we still, as humans, still have a role. Although, although of course, change and is needed in higher ed to keep up with all the new technologies. Miro, a question for you. Uh, we In our last conversation, you talked about how many models you had available at your school that students could use. I was amazed at the number. Um, how do you make it so access to those models is equitable for all students?
Well, that's something that we've been concerned about when generative AI first hit the scene. Some students were buying subscriptions and they were having access to the latest AI models. Some faculty had budget or grant money and they were buying access to this, but not all faculty, not all students, and some were using the free versions and possibly putting out privileged information into a public large language model, which is not what we wanted to do. So we wanted to make sure that all students had access to the same resources, that all faculty had access to the same resources, along with researchers as well. So we worked with our vendors and some consultants to develop more or less a portal for access to a variety of large language models. So we currently have access to 1,800 different models. Some are particular to, say, medical research, some are particular to academics, some are particular to administrative type functions. So we wanted everybody to have a secure environment where we could use it on say research data, analyzing research data, and it wasn't part of training a large model, a large public language model. So we wanted to have the security in place, wanted to have the access in place, and give it to all the students, all the faculty, all our researchers. So we've rolled it out, but we're monitoring it very closely because the costs of this are unknown. These are token costs, and token costs are changing from day to day. The token cost for GPT-4o is different from GPT-3, and that's true of every new iteration of a model. So we don't really know what this is all going to cost. So we have quotas in place. We're tracking it very closely because we don't want to wake up with a monthly bill of $400,000. So we want everybody to have the access, but we're closely tracking the cost of it because so far it's not replacing the cost of anything. It's just an additional cost. So we have to be very careful about that. But so far, the response has been very, very positive from faculty in using it to run their classes, using it to change how they how they teach their subject matter. So right now there's a lot of interest in it from faculty and how can I make use of this? How can I teach the students the relevant lessons with AI, to ask the stronger questions, to be able to analyze the answers better. So that's where we are right now. Everybody has the access to all these models. And looking forward to developing the graduates that the world is going to need in a few years.
Thanks, Miro. So we had one question for each of the panelists to get the audience to sort of understand where they're coming from. We'd like to open it up to the audience to ask any questions of the panelists, or the panelists to ask questions of the audience if it's of help to you as well. And of course, the topic can be anything, or it can be a question related to what's already been discussed. Thanks, Tom, for the next poll question.
I have a question about the poll question. Is it just percentage of time using it or percentage of time talking about it?
That's always the question. I would say using it.
Yeah, I find myself using it about at least probably between 0 and 25% personally myself. And that's only because I've been in the field I've been in the technology for over going to 40 years, corporate realm for 30. So with education and all that, just most of the stuff's already in my head. What I find that AI helps is if I want to quickly write up a RFP, instead of me spending 8 hours, I can whip it out in 30. And I already know what it should have as a framework and template. So, and then I just can quickly spend the time to just make sure that the key components are in there and it touches what I want. For me, it saves time because of everything that I already know what the expectation is, what it should generate. I don't know how anybody else utilizes it in the education realm. I'd be curious to see some of the people that are sitting out there, how they use it, if they use it in a way that helps speed up their workflow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll add, I just did a productivity training right before we came to this for our campus, and we tried to highlight, I think it was 8 different tools to basically say, you don't have to sit and worry about this giant mountain of a project you have in front of you. You can use AI tools to start breaking it down. You can use more advanced models to start reasoning through those steps. You could use tools to help build a presentation. You can use more advanced tools to help start to create a customized knowledge-based system for you to walk through those. So I agree. I also will add, if it were to talk about AI, I would be fully at 100%. And my husband has a rule in our household that I'm only allowed to talk about AI for 30 minutes, and then the conversation has to change. So you know what? Some of us do spend too much time talking about this. But I also would be interested to know how other folks are integrating this into their days in that higher ed environment.
Yeah, that would be great to get some thoughts on. And anyone in the audience willing to share?
Here's a question. So with the number of people that are out here, assuming a good percentage is in the higher ed, what would be one of your major concerns in using AI from a student perspective? So if you're a faculty, what is your major concern when you letting them use that tool? Or as a faculty member, you using the tool? Do you think it takes away from your ability to teach because it will say waters down your, your experience or your what you bring to the table because you're really using a tool that could do it versus, yeah, you've been in it in 30 years. Be curious to hear. So
I also noticed that Ben had his hand up.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I was going to touch back on some of the things that the panelists touched on, but maybe I can use James' point, sort of question as a way to start this a little bit, which is I think there were a number of very important things that were touched on by the different panelists. One is access to the technology is paramount, right? We can all talk about it for days. There's nothing like hands-on experience. So I think in a university context, be it on the administrative side, on the academic side, making it possible for people to get their hands on the technology and then educate them on how to do it safely. I want to go back, Emily, to your point about reinventing, higher ed. I think for me, one of the critical role of higher ed in education overall is to develop critical thinking in the students. And critical thinking in this context is more important than ever. So yes, the tool can write the paper for you, but what does that actually do, right? And I think from a teaching standpoint, I think this is a huge opportunity, at least in those areas that allow for this, which is to focus less the teaching on delivering gobs of content and assessing on various skills, but really try to encourage and develop critical thinking as it relates to this stuff, because that's the only way to make sense of this. Going back, James, to your question, I think there were a number of examples in the chat about document summarization. I use AI to generate random images and PowerPoint presentations. Interestingly enough, stating the obvious here, it never produces a good enough end product, but it's a leg up to, something that I can then use and tweak to be my own.
Has anyone ever had the experience of being known as a user of AI and then having somebody say, can you do X, Y, and Z for me? But please don't use AI.
Speaking of which, Emily actually has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. Please
No,
go
you're
ahead.
you're fine. Thank you, Nuno. Thank you, Tom. I was gonna just also piggyback off of Ben and kind of go on what we've been talking about definitely in the chat with this focus on student use and integration. And on our campus, we like to integrate AI into courses in a red, yellow, or green spectrum, if that helps anyone. Red is absolutely no use of AI in this course, and we try to really educate our students that you need this foundational knowledge to move on and advance in a career. So in this course, it's a red. You're not allowed to use it at all, but we try to really start with that educational understanding. The yellow and the green, we try to say yellow is some assignments you will be allowed to use AI tools and will help you understand when and why. And green is you can use any AI tools you want. But we always educate the students in the red and yellow that, or excuse me, the yellow and the green, that it's like owning a puppy, okay? When they were little, they all wanted a puppy. We all wanted a puppy, maybe a kitty or an iguana if you were that weird kid, but no judgments, right? And you went to your parents and you said, can I have a puppy? And they said, yeah, you can have a puppy. If you walk it, you feed it, it chews up a pillow, you clean up after it. And we try to educate our students the same way. If you want to use AI tools in this assignment, you have to be responsible for it. If it creates a bias, if it hallucinates, if it doesn't involve you taking on that AI tool and critically thinking about it, you didn't care for your puppy unless you're not going to pass the assignment. And so to your point, that critical thinking aspect, Ben, is so at the forefront of everything we're doing right now and needs to stay in our purview, but we need to be transparent with students too, so they understand we're not putting these tools on ice right now because we just don't want you to cheat. We're putting them there because you need to gain this foundational knowledge or this critical thinking skill. So I just wanted to add on to what Ben was saying. Thank you.
Can I, like, if I may, if I can jump on that, the catch being though, and someone brought up a great question, and if I'm reading your name incorrectly, I apologize. Avi Hyman is, how does, when something costs $1 million and a large institution can pay for it, how does a smaller institution pay for it, or even a small department within a larger institution if they're not budgeted for it for that year? And we are a small school. I mean, we may only have at most 900 that passes through the course of a year. So for us, we're relying, with the faculty and the students to use the free versions, but trying to set a standard so that they're using the same tool instead of mixing. The only thing that comes into play is what I think, Miro, maybe you had touched on this, is that information, that should not be entered as part of your query or your prompt because it's proprietary or it's, PII type of stuff. Then that obviously that opens up a whole new can of worms. But that's another dilemma that with the next budget year, we're going to try to figure out how we're going to handle that. So, which limits us, I guess, to your point, Emily, is like, at what extent can I actually use all the different types of tools? It's kind of limits us in some way.
Other thoughts, other reactions?
Ben has their hand up.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
I wanted to add to what James was saying. And of course, I lost my thought as I came off mute.
No worries.
Yeah, no, I wanted to, get back to the point about, safe use of the technology. My comment about, making sure the technology gets in everybody's hands, right, is important, but also quickly followed by saying and educating people on the safe use of the technology. I think James' point is so important. We've had, close calls here at Harvard where grad students took restricted data sets that we get access to and try to load those up in publicly available AI services. And so we've been on a campaign with staff and academics and students to sort of try to get everybody educated on, the risks associated with using these services. And I'd say there are two levels of issues we're talking about. I think there are practical right now issues. For example, the data issue I just mentioned is one of those. And I think maybe going back to some of Emily's points earlier, which is, what does it mean to use AI as a, handy digital assistant over an extended period of time? And another old guy's story that I'm going to bring to the floor here is Many, many moons ago, I was having dinner with Esther Dyson, who's part of the leading voices in the early development of web and internet. And the topic of conversation for dinner was, can you monetize social networks? This is before social networks were what they are today. And there's about a handful of us, and we didn't have a clue. We were like, no, no one is going to make money on social networks. Evidently, there's no money to be made in this, right? And of course, as we know today, social networks are everywhere, and the amount of money generated through these networks is enormous. Social networks have had great benefits because they allow people to connect that otherwise would not have an easy way to connect around areas of interest or, family and friends. But we've also seen social networks having a rather negative impact on society and culture. And I think this is the next level risk on AI, right? Which goes back to the point about critical thinking is, what does it mean for us to rely more heavily on these digital assistants, to do some or all of what we do, right? I'm quite comfortable using a spell checker, and I don't feel like my livelihood is put at risk by using a spell checker. But what does it mean to use all these tools to do a lot of work, on our behalf?
Oh, we got Emily, I think, raised her hand first, and then Miro.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to piggyback off of Ben was saying and give you another analogy, because that's just my whole thing. But we also like to really explain to our students and our faculty in the vein of AI literacy and educating folks on these tools. It's one thing just to use them. It's another thing to understand how to responsibly and ethically use them. And I've always used the analogy, you can give someone a fully stocked industrial kitchen, but if they don't know how to cook, good luck. You have a great show with fabulous ratings, but you don't have good end products. So keep that in mind.
So true. Mira?
So one thing I wanted to mention is we're still somewhat in the learning phase with all of this. There's new products coming out, new features all the time. We've been using AI from an administrative point of view and summarizing documents pretty regularly. That's a very common use for us. We were playing around with Google's Notebook LM recently, where it can take a document and create a podcast out of it. So as we were testing this, we uploaded our Microsoft agreement into Notebook LM. It's a, 74-page document. It created a 15-minute podcast of a male and a female talking to each other about this document. And we actually learned something from it. We learned 3 or 4 nuances that weren't readily, weren't visible to us as we read through it. But listening to somebody talk about it, it actually gave us more insight to it. And then we went back and read it, go, oh yeah, we didn't quite catch that the first time around. So as these tools come out, I mean, it's going to be, I think, really amazing on how they work and what they do. And what all the existing products we have will have it as part of the core product. I mean, we see that already with a lot of other things we use daily. But I think it's just going to be more and more over the next year or two.
But one product that's really amazed me is I don't know if anyone's played with Google's advanced research tool, Gemini. It literally, you can tell it to do a research report on any topic, and it'll go out and look at hundreds of websites, summarize them back in an actual report that makes sense. It's another level of research beyond just doing a search. I see Emily nodding,
Yes.
but
I
I'm
just
just
did a presentation
well,
about that. I didn't mean to interject, but I knew I'm agreeing with you. I just we did a productivity presentation and we showed a bunch of our faculty and administrative staff this morning how they could do that. We had a sample with our marketing department where we ran a marketing report. It looked at 364 websites and wrote a 20-page comprehensive report. It's in minutes. It's mind-blowing. And Notebook LM too, Miro, fabulous tool. That podcasting and how you can use that to really listen to different viewpoints or arguments. Brilliant. Sorry to cut you off, Nero.
no, I've been using also ChatGPT Pro, right? The $200 a month I've been playing version. I've been playing with it, and it's absolutely stunning, absolutely amazing. I see Irina has her hand up. Sorry, Irina, for the delay.
No, that's okay. Saying to people you can't use the tools, they're going to use them, whether you like them, want them to or not. I mean, I would like to say someone to me, don't use this. I'm going to tell you where to go, frankly. But what people need is education. It's the challenge is, I mean, I'm a lifelong learner, and even I sometimes want to just say, like, you know what, I want to read a book not related to any of this. But it's a huge help. A few years ago, when I was in a different role, I hated taking all those minutes. I always hated it, and everybody hated it. People still hate it. And obviously, if you're in a hospital, then you really have to be careful using all of these tools. I mean, they have to vet it and lock down. I mean, it's not a choice. It's compliance, if nothing else. But these tools are of a huge help. If it's not, a HIPAA type meeting or something, it could be a HIPAA meeting. If it's a departmental meeting or any kind of a meeting, for example, with mentoring program I'm in, you can take those summarized notes from Zoom and then you review them and make changes. You can use even ChatGPT or any of these. You say who you are, say I am a digital accessibility specialist. I want to create small mini courses for my department. And it will give you the information. If you have the background or if you are willing to dig deeper than the AI summary that pops up when you do a Google search or a Bing search or whatever, then it's okay. It's like Wikipedia used to be the anathema. Don't use Wikipedia. But a lot of articles on Wikipedia are very well developed. Now, what you do is you scroll down and look at resources. So if people have the education, that's fine. I tell you what really bothers me. Everybody's talking about students. Nobody's talking as much about faculty and staff, especially staff, and especially older learners and elders. If anybody needs education, it's them. And it needs to be in a form that's reasonably easy to understand. So I think efforts really need to be ramped up in this area because we do have, I'm about to hand in a smartphone from Lively to my mom. And I will have to tell you only use this, and this because things just come up because the smartphone. And it's the same with AI. So you have to have education, you have to have the guidelines, use it, but these are the things you have to watch out for. Because it doesn't matter what you use. I have a colleague who says if somebody wants to use it for evil, they will, you can't stop them. So the challenge is making sure that people use it for good. And remember that they are the data, because not a lot of us can afford the the full versions of these tools. I can only quote unquote afford them because University of Michigan can afford them.
Miro, do you have a response?
Yeah, great point on the education. Early on, we had a lot of requests about that from really all groups. And we held several what we called promptathons across campus about how do you write a prompt? How does a prompt work? What should you include? What's context? All those things. And it really got the ball rolling with faculty and students and our administration. We're actually going to do that again in the coming weeks with our board of trustees because they want to understand what's the challenge of all this. How does this work? We're going to do that. And we're also put together an online course that we're sharing with our broad community. So anybody, I'm talking about the community outside of the university, can come to some public spaces, take this online course and have access to our AI models. So it's really trying to kind of broaden who we are impacting with this education. So I think, Irina, the points you made on education are critical. We're trying to reach out to as many as we can, but it's a challenge.
Can I add to that as well?
Please.
Of course.
So our staff faculty age is probably, and I'm just guessing because I don't want to pin anybody in ages, but we'll say they're from anywhere from 40 to 70. So there's a myriad of learning curves, And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to have faculty meetings where we try to address the concerns, try to have teachers who are really in bed with AI, how they use it, and explain it in ways that some of the older teachers that are just barely touching the edge of the waters of, and how they could apply it to their classes. And we've also created a Teams page where we've got information on there, as well as listing of particular AI tools that at this point aren't going to cost anything, and we don't risk any IP or intellectual property information from possibly going out. So that would be, as a side note, the only worrying thing that as a director of technology I worry about is what information is being released out there inadvertently. But even then, that's just a matter of education from me to the faculty as well as to the staff. So, and I don't think we'll ever have a solution for that because we're all human and everybody occasionally makes a mistake. So,
I'm the CIO of a small Catholic liberal arts college in New Hampshire. You can Google that, figure out which one that is. It is amazing that there are faculty that are sort of I wouldn't necessarily embracing, but certainly trying to figure out the terrain. But there's a whole group that are in this weird state of denial. And it's really quite disturbing when our students clearly are using it. And we've actually been tracking at a macro level the amount of usage on campus simply by where the campus network traffic is going to. And you present this to the academic leadership of the college, and they seem slightly unfazed by it. And I'm just curious as to what's everybody else's reaction out there. I view it as a tool. I use it every day. I appreciate some of the comments about how if I'm really using it to do, at least at this point in my life, what I consider tedious tasks that it can do a pretty good job at right out of the box. I will be honest, I use our favorite ChatGPT to help me write performance evaluations simply because it does so very eloquently. And it, I basically get the gist right. And rather than spending, an hour writing 5 paragraphs of nice prose being polite, I can do it in 5 minutes. But there is a separation that between at least a subset of our students who are embracing it, probably not in a very healthy way, and sort of the other end of the spectrum is a group of faculty that are just ignoring it in a very, very fearful sort of way. I'd be interested in any comments on that.
Well, we
Anyone
run
would
the
like
gamut of that. Early on, I had faculty calling me and saying, block it. We cannot allow this on campus. And those same faculty are calling me today and they would say, I want all the AI. Give me everything.
But one of the interesting things about the way we're talking about AI now is, and I'm looking at the picture, and I don't know how old everybody is, but it's really weird. But in our professional lifetimes, if you roll back 15 years, we were having similar conversations about privacy around Google and what Street Maps was doing and what Google was doing and what Facebook was doing and how people were being tracked and all this information that they were gathering. Now they have all that information. And now we've sort of gone to the next level where a different set of players and some of the same players, but there are some different players in the space. Now we're sort of maturing that data gathering model because everything we put in is fodder that they can use any way they please. And so it's like it's a weird historical cycle that we're going through, because some people thought the world was going to end when Street View happened. As a matter of fact, in some countries it did end because they basically stopped it. But now everybody, at least I know, loves Waze, loves Google Maps, loves Street Maps, loves everything because it's just become part of the working part of our lives.
Ben?
I want to add a little bit to what Stephen just said. I personally am still very concerned about data collection broadly, particularly in the US. I'm originally from Europe. Europe has broad regulations to control what people do with this. For the last 12 years, I've been teaching a course on critical thinking in cyberspace, and the whole issue of data collection, privacy, and trust is very relevant. And I think the broad implications of this are still not fully appreciated. How it influences elections or policymaking and perception of populations at large. So those things are clearly a concern. So as excited as I am about AI, I'm also very concerned with the possible sort of long-term implication of some of this stuff. But I think, Stephen, going back to your point and some of the other people's point, the cat's out of the bag, right? The early days of the faculty, at least at the extension school here at Harvard, realizing that ChatGPT existed was to prohibit the use of ChatGPT, and then to look at solutions to sniff out where ChatGPT might have been used by students, which is, looking back, silly, right? The cat's out of the bag. People are going to use it. They should use it. And I think they should be educated on how to not shoot themselves in the foot and how to use it responsibly, right? And I think this is the challenge that we have right now, that we're at a stage where it's here, it's now, and there's no way to prevent people from using it. It's the question of how do we help people become more aware of how to use it responsibly.
I think right there, Ben, is a great topic potentially for our next meetup. Human-centered AI implementations, right? Because in the end, it's all about people and humans.
Well, to add to that, I think as one person phrased it, it's who Stephen did actually, is self-regulation. Like how do you employ this new technology, bring it to the staff and/or faculty to use, and training them so that they understand the pros and cons in their action of using that tool, so that a corporation doesn't get susceptible to a lawsuit or some other dire thing. So,
Good point. I've had many conversations with people and have received all sorts of different reactions, but in many cases, people are scared. They're scared about their job. They're scared about not being able to learn, not being able to keep up. And I do think it's so important to have individual conversations with people and just hear what they have to say. I think we might all be surprised in some ways, good and bad. I also wanted to mention that we're about at the hour to end. If anyone has if you're looking for assistance from another university, or you want to help, the audience, the group, feel free to post here in chat. This is put together so that we can all help each other. If you don't feel sharing with everyone, direct it to the individual person you're looking to reach out to. In the last couple of minutes, any last questions or comments from anyone?
I'll just add to what you just said, though. If you're unable to quickly get your thoughts into the chat, or it's an afterthought, don't forget the Meetup has a discussion, so you can always start a conversation on the Meetup. And we've had some phenomenal conversations on after Meetup Zoom meetings on ideas and concepts. So feel free to also use that as a blackboard of just throwing things up there and seeing what sticks.
And a couple folks have also shared some links and some comments in chat. I will be gathering some of the best ones and anything else that folks want to share and sending it out to the group. So if you have anything else you'd like, feel free to drop it in chat, send it to me via email. But either way, we'll be sending that out after this event. It also sounds like we're going to be doing another meetup on AI, because this conversation could go on for another hour. And I want to hear not about what people are scared about, but what we should be scared about or should be concerned about regardless. Because there's a lot of stuff that we're not really thinking about, at least not, the lay folks like me who, we may not be thinking about it, but it's definitely going to be important. So
I was going to say thank you for letting me speak and letting me meet all these individuals out here, like-minded individuals. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you all for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great discussion.
Thank you to the panel as well. Very, very
Absolutely.
much. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.